Welcome to another tying session. I've had a few requests to demonstrate the NYAP Pro and more specifically on how to mount the body. Now, the original NYAP was tied by James Christmas, who guides on Alphonse Island in the Seychelles. And he developed the fly. It's an extremely easy fly to cast because of the flat profile and the fairly small piece of foam that it's made out of, and it lots of hook cape open, so it's very easy to your hook up rate increases quite a bit with this profile. And what I did was to kind of redevelop it. First thing you do when you get the components and when you start to tie, cut the component, cut it in half. I'm going to stick a ruler in here so you can see where the cut goes through. So you cut it in the middle with a sharp blade and all the way through the wrap guard at the back and in the gill slit all the way to the top of the gill slit. That's how deep the cut goes in that component. Now make sure the cut is fairly straight. Then the next thing I do is I take a bare hook and I put the component on a bare hook. The only reason for that, in the position where it will be, only reason for that is that it will start to slowly stretch while you tie. The component is going to lie there with the hook inside and it will slowly stretch the component open. Just leave there's a bit of memory in the foam, so it will leave a little bit of a gap. It's easier to mount it. It's easier to get glue in there. It just makes it a little bit easier to get it on the hook that you are going to tie the tail on. So I'm going to put this aside and then we're going to prepare the tail. What you need to do, if you get this component, let me just take that out. That gap at the back there is where the tail is going to come out. So you want to start to tie this fly on the hook from this point, from that point there, backwards. That's where the tail needs to be exposed from. From there forward, you can wrap it with thread. If you wrap it further back this way with thread, you're going to see the thread, and you don't want that. So you need to go from there forward. You can wrap thread. So you mark it on the hook, and from there forward we can wrap thread. So let's go again. Let me put this on the hook and tie that down with a few wraps. I'm going to make open wraps for now to get all the material in place, and I want to put a bit of resin in there just to bind it a little bit better. Not much, you just want it to draw in between the fibers and bind that. And it's not a quick dry resin, it's going to take a while to set. Then in poppers, obviously it's a popper tail. You can decide what material you want to use. You can decide how much flash you want to put in there. I like to put a bit of UV flash. This is a grip UV crystal flash. You can put a flashaboo in, but not too much. I'm not going to put too much. It's intended for water like the Seychelles, GTs, flats. So you don't want to put too much flash in there. The water is crystal clear there already, and it is going to be very bright. So put a few strands of flash on top of that and tie that down. And remember, this is not a dry fly. It doesn't have to be the neatest fly out there. And then on top of that, we're going to put some black Supreme. Right there. And that's going to be the tail. Now you can wrap that down properly. Cut a little bit away. Now the next step is to tie the gills, and I added, somewhere you need to add a bit of red, and I added it in the gills, so that is where the fly is going to sit. So you take your thread forward, that's in the right place right there where the gills are, and we're going to take a piece of eye chenille. This is about a 10mm eye chenille, and tie that in right there. Cut that off. And then I'm going to brush all that back. I just want to make a few open wraps. There we go. All that back. Make 2 open wrap or tight wraps against each other there, and you tie that off right there. Right there, and then tie the thread off. Whip finish that, and I'm using a heavy thread. I'm using a flat waxed. You need something heavier to tie this heavy material down, and that's the tail. Now the last step to prepare the tail is to add glue to it, and I'm using not sure what's available in other countries, but in South Africa we use contact adhesive. It's a one component adhesive, but you need to apply it on both sides, and it needs to dry. So I'm going to apply it to one side. I always apply it to the hook and let it dry. It's difficult to apply it to the component and then let it dry, because the two sides are going to touch. So on the component we only put glue inside, and then we glue it onto the hook. So what you do here is to, on the back, try not to get too much of the gills involved in the glue, because you will not be able to separate it. There, and then again in the front, so you'll of the gills, and you want this component to sit properly and to be glued properly onto the hook, otherwise it just comes off. You're going to be fishing for GTs and all sorts of big fish, and it's very strong, easy to rip this off. So you want to make sure the component is glued on properly, and you're going to put that aside to dry. And you can tie a bunch of these, put them aside, and glue them the next day if you want to, or just leave it for 10-15 minutes to dry a bit, and then glue the component. Okay, so I've tied a bunch of these now, well, 6, and I'm going to put and glue them. I'm going to put this back into the vise and mount the component. So one thing you need for the component, to mount the component, is a paper clamp, one that is wider than the component. So I'm going to take this component out of the hook, one that's wider than the component, that will fit over the component like that, because that's what you're going to use to hold the component in position on the hook. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take some more of this glue, and we're going to work it into the gap. I'll take a dubbing needle or sharp object, open that component, and don't worry about making a bit of a mess. It's pretty easy to clean this, and I'll show you how to do that, but you're going to work that into that cap. Work enough glue in there. Don't be too shy with that. You want to make sure that thing glues properly all the way and into the rack guard as well. So once you've done that, you're going to mount this. So we've got that worked in there. We're going to mount this. So now the way to mount this is you lift the tail up, push that over the, right there at the back, over the hook. So the tail is almost in position now, and the back end of the set. All you need to do is to tilt the component. So we're going to push that component back and work it onto the hook. And that is how you get it on the hook in the right position. All you need to do now is to try and work some of that fibers out there from the chenille. And then make sure there's glue on all the sides. And then you get it in position, and the eye of the hook must be just above the bottom of the popper. You want to have as much gape as possible, so you want to get that in position. You want to get everything in position there, and then clamp it. I'm going to clamp it from the top, see if I can, so that we can see the bottom. I normally clamp them from the bottom. Push that up a bit. This is not going to work well from the top. I think I'm going to turn the clamp around. And clamp it from there. Now make sure you close that cap there nicely, and now you leave that to dry. Again, the foam needs to set, and once that's, I'm going to leave it for about an hour or two, and then I'll be back with you guys. Okay, let's put this back in the vise and take the clamp off and see the complete fly. And that's the complete NYAP. Now you'll see a little bit of a line where the glue is, and you can clean that off. It's very easy. But you can see the gills, red eyes. You can obviously change the eyes if you want to. These components come with eyes already on them. You can use a different material there. I've seen guys using a very fine synthetic brush in there. I just use chenille. I think it's more about the action than the color of or the finer detail on the fly. The tail, you can see the position of the tail. The rack guard lifts the tail away from the hook, and the other thing is the foam that we have here at the back also helps to lift the hook a little bit, and it sits better on the water. You can see the thin profile, which assists with the hookup. Obviously there's more gape for a hookup because of the thinner profile, and they may not pop as loud as a normal round cup-faced popper, but they definitely make enough noise to attract fish from. Give them a try. They're very easy to cast, and definitely something you should have in your box when you fish the flats. Please follow the channel, please subscribe, please like the video, and keep an eye out for more videos.